Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to the show Indestructible Souls, the podcast for mental wellness for African American men and boys. It is Sunday, May 29th. We're almost halfway through 2020, 2022. So once again, my name is Jonathan Beauregard. I am your host of Indestructible Souls, the podcast for mental wellness for African American men and boys. Today, there's a lot going on in the world yet again. Um, Before I get to all of my input on everything that's been going on in the world, I want to promote a special event that's coming up very quickly within the next couple of weeks. On June 15th, I will be a part of this wonderful event in the city of Rialto, June 15th at 6 o'clock. Mental Health Awareness Day, conversation about men. So we will be focusing on not only all men, but men of color. And so please check out the number. You could call and make reservations, get more information about the event itself. I will be there covering unconscious bias towards Black men and men of color. And so please come out and support the event. It is sponsored by the city of Rialto on June 15th. So please join us. Bring your young men out, older men out, and let's have some meaningful conversations to affect change within our community. So here we are again with there's a lot going on in the world, and I really just want to give my 2 cents. I really want to talk about what's been going on with these mass shootings, if you will, terrorist attacks, domestic terrorists, and I want to make it valuable. So I will talk about from a therapist perspective and how to cope and what should we be telling our children, especially our elementary school age children that have to go to school and try to understand what's been going on. And I'm not going to shy away from my political stance on this because the reality of it is it's all political. And it will always be political. But yet, I think we have to saddle up because this will not change in this country. This will not change. It will continue. The sad part about it is that nobody wants to do anything to really affect change in this country when related to gun violence, domestic terrorism, mental health, and we want to blame these type of events on everything but the reality of who this country is. And so as I delve into it, just understand that this is my perspective. And any backlash from my perspective, so be it. I'll stand 10 toes down when giving my opinion and how I feel about things. And so before we get into it, just remember this is Jonathan Beauregard. I am the host of Indestructible Souls. You can also find me at BeauregardTherapy.com. Beauregard Therapy continues to expand, and within the next couple of months, we will officially be a group practice. And the hope and the goal is to be able to help more people. Me as an individual therapist, I can only touch so many lives, but as a group practice, my influence and vision, I think we can change the community. And that's my goal over the long term. So let's get into it. So recently we had the grocery store shooting in Buffalo, New York. And I don't want to forget that, where 10 people, mostly elderly, were gunned down by a known racist. or someone who's been on the internet and so forth and was not shy about his views and decided to go into a neighborhood that he knew was predominantly African American, predominantly Black, and shoot up a common area where people go to get food and to take care of their families. So here we are yet again. And then days after, in Texas, we have a mass shooting on a schoolyard campus, an elementary school, where I believe it was 19 children, defenseless children, and 2 teachers were murdered viciously. And here we are again having another conversation about gun control and all those things. Now, I have my opinion about gun control. I know when people hear, well, we know who we're talking about, people that are like the NRA and all of these people, when they hear things like gun control, it shakes them to their core. But I want to talk about why. First of all, do we need gun control? Absolutely, we need gun control. The term gun control does not mean taking away your right to bear arms. We'll get into that too. It does not mean taking away your right to bear arms, but that's how people exploit the truth and twist the truth and think that this country wants to take away a person's right to bear arms. Now, here's the thing. We are supposed to be the world leader. We are supposed to be, meaning that America, United States of America, we're supposed to be the world, the leading country in all things when it comes to technology, innovation, capital, money, all of that stuff. But yet, we are supposed to be the most advanced country in the world, but yet we still have primitive ideas. We still have problems that we cannot fix. We have problems that other countries, even third world countries, do not face and do not have. We have the most people in prison in this country, not only in this country, in California, than in the rest of the world. And the homeless problem, the hunger problem, the employment problem, and all of these things continue to persist, yet we're supposed to be the example in the most advanced country in the world. Now, here's my take on why this will never change. Unfortunately, this will never change. You have to understand that America, the United States of America, is who it is at its core. Now, here's my belief. When we talk about the Second Amendment and we see all of, the Constitution and so forth and so on, for us, people of color, when we talk about laws and rules that we live by that are so outdated, when we talk about the Constitution, we understand, or at least we should understand, and people should understand, that when that Constitution was written, it was not written with us in mind. We were not citizens, and in fact, we weren't even considered whole human beings. When that Second Amendment, when we talk about the Second Amendment or the Constitution in and of itself, it did not include people of color. And here's the thing. Oftentimes, if not all the time, people want us, meaning people of color, Black men, women, children, people want us to forget about the past and get over it. But yet the very people that says get over the past and want us to get over it and forget about it still live by primitive ideas that this country was based on. How am I supposed to get over slavery and things like that when you still have a inferiority master mentality? You're not getting over your inheritance of this ideology. Now, here's when we talk about the Second Amendment. I've been reading these articles, and as you know, right after the shooting in Texas, the next couple of days was the NRA convention, and then there's protests, and then there's all these people defending their right to bear arms and don't take their guns and all of this other good stuff. But as I read the articles and see some of the ideas of these people that obviously hold dear to their right to bear arms in the NRA, which in my opinion is just another, is just the new branding for the KKK, but that's my opinion and I'll stand by it, is that when they talk about the right to bear arms to protect themselves, yes, I believe every person should have the right to defend themselves, defend their family, and to defend their home. Here's the problem with this, though. Here's the problem, especially when we bring in the Second Amendment. Why was the Second Amendment even a thing? Now, keep in mind, so when you talk about, people coming over from England, and then here we are in the New World and so forth and so on, people were given a right to bear arms to protect themselves against the militia and so forth, and basically to arm their citizens against enemies and against England and things like that. Now, here's the other reason why. People were given rights, or citizens were given rights to bear arms for slave owners to protect themselves against uprising of slaves. They wanted to make sure that if slaves decided to revolt, that slave owners and so forth, the citizens, could bear arms against any uprising. That's the spirit of the Second Amendment. Now, so when you think that, okay, we've advanced past that, right? When you think we should have advanced past that, and that's no longer what it means, but it's still exactly what it means. In the sense that when you talk to people about bearing arms against this invisible enemy, you act like we don't know who you're talking about. Here's the thing. I guarantee you, 99% of those, the people that's so beloved about the Second Amendment has never even been confronted with a threat. The reality of it is they're the threat. But nobody wants to talk about that. When we talk about domestic terrorism, who is it? Then they want to, when it's them, they want to blame it on mental health and other things other than the reality that the psyche of America is, to its core, is evil. The psyche of America to its core is evil. Exactly why things like the Second Amendment exist, why over the years, over the centuries, over the decades, that things had to be amended to include all people and reinterpreted to include all people, but the spirit of it is not changed. Black legal gun owners are not treated the same as white legal gun owners. Why? Because the spirit of things have not changed. Understand this. The psyche of America is evil. It's based in racism. It's based in all of these things. Now, you can love who you want. You can have friends of all ethnicities and background, and all of that's fine. And I'm for all of it. But the reality is, at the core, when you talk about the primitive mind of America, when you get down to natural reactions, when you get down to natural sentiments and attitudes about things, the core of America is wicked and evil, especially against people of color. Here's what I mean by that. The psyche of America. Here's why things will never change, in my opinion. I don't think you can get any sane person to admit that they're okay with a group of people of color being harmed. Not openly, but there's There's people all, there's these different groups probably fantasize about these things and talk about these things and so forth. But then now as you rise up into politics, government, law enforcement, and all of these things, when you talk about what's at the core and what's at the psyche of it, here's why it'll never change. Although they may not go out and do mass shootings themselves, but they agree with the sentiment of it. They agree with the attitude of it. They agree the attitude towards people of color, particularly Black people, are very similar, if not the same. That's why when you see an event or something happens and the perpetrator or the aggressor is white, that's why you see the treatment different of when somebody is Black. The treatment is more aggressive and most likely more deadly. But when it's someone that's not Black, because the psyche and the sentiment is the same, the attitude is the same, then the treatment is the same. So when we talk about, and you see people, and you see all of these things happening, not only to gain political power and to keep political power and to appeal to their racist base, the reason why they can't walk away from it is because they're okay with it. They're okay with people of color being brutalized. It's always been that way. So when you talk about why things won't change and why and why is it that the things that we talk about, and when we see things happen, and you would think any sane person would want to do something about it. Understand this. They will never do anything about it because they're okay with it. As long as it's not them. As long as it's not somebody that looked like them. The moment it's somebody that looks like them and believes like them, now all of a sudden sound the alarms. When you look at what happened in Buffalo recently, because we could go down the list and this is going to keep happening, and it's been happening, you have all Black people. When you look at what happened in Texas, you have predominantly Hispanic people. But then, and I'm not saying it's never happened to white people, because it has, and it was just as detrimental and tragic in any case. My problem is that everybody wants to skirt around the issue. Everybody wants to skirt around the reality. Why do you think critical race theory is such a big topic? Because the powers that be does not want to expose the truth. They do not want to show the devil who they are. The reality is that at the core, the attitude, the beliefs, when I see something, and here's the thing, we all do it. We all do it. When something happens, we're trying to see if they look like us. We're trying to see if they believe like us. We all do it. Here's the thing. When we talk about what was happening in Ukraine, right? The war that's going on in Ukraine. I personally think, and I personally believe, we as a people, meaning Black people, we love everybody. And here's what I mean by that. We don't systematically or philosophically hate anyone. We just don't. It's not in our nature. That's not how God built us. And if we do, it's a counterpunch. It's a counterpunch to what's been done to us. So when you talk about what happened in Ukraine, we stopped caring when we saw that they were blocking Black Africans, from escaping war. Like even in the now follow me on this. When we talk about the psyche, and I've always said this, when we talk about the psyche, here's the thing. In the time of war, when people are trying to escape to save their lives, they can't even stop in a moment of crisis, life and death crisis, to have an ounce of humanity. The hate still rised up in the midst of war. So when we talk about something that's at the psyche, here's why I'm so cautious, me personally. Here's why I'm so cautious. Is that I don't have an issue with anybody. But I know in the time of war, I know in the time of turmoil, I know in the time of chaos, that primitive mind is going to snap. That primitive mind is going to come into play, and people are going to do what's at the core. Like what we saw in Ukraine. Now, here's the thing. As long as it was happening to everybody and we all have to escape, okay, fine. But the moment where it became about us and them, it snapped. Because that's what's at the core of the psyche. And it's the same here in this country. I am upset, for one. The reality of it is that I'm tired of seeing innocent people being brutalized and murdered in what is supposed to be the most powerful, richest country in the world, but yet we can't stop this kind of stuff. It's sad that, here's the thing. You talk about, we've had the war on drugs, we had prison reform, we had mandatory sentencing, and all of these things. We had all of these movements to incarcerate Black men and to so-called stop drugs and crimes, even though we weren't floating that stuff over here when things were at an epidemic proportion. But here we are yet again at more school shootings and mass shootings, but there is no movement to stop it. One of the articles that I read was teachers just should be armed. So the answer is put more guns out there. Teachers have enough time, enough stress trying to teach students and practically help raise children, let alone to be armed. Because we don't want to deal with this at the core. So the answer is to put more guns out there and arm teachers. But here's the other thing they wanted to blame. Now check this out. This is what I read in an article. Matter of fact, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Probably can't. But one of the things that they talked about is because they took prayer out of schools. The problem is, it ain't the people in the schools that's shooting. It's people coming from the outside. So how are we going to blame it on that no prayers in the schools? If that's not a scapegoat, then they talk about single parenting. The problem is single parenting. So who do you think they're taking a shot at? Here's what it said. They attributed the attack and others to a broader breakdown in society wrought by the removal of God from public schools, the decline of two-parent households, a perceived leniency towards criminals, social media, and an increase in mental illness. Here's the thing. These people are perfectly insane. It's the ideology that you've been teaching them. But look at the sentiment there. They want to blame it on mental illness, social media, but you're the ones who have the websites. You're the one who have the dark web. You're the one who have all of these conservative, whatever you want to call it, that's spewing the hate. The decline of two-parent households. Here's the thing. when you talk about the decline of two-parent household, that's something that plagues everyone. But you got to understand the sentiment here. When you look at this list, who do you think they're talking about? But yet, it is homegrown terrorists that commits these acts. It is homegrown terrorists. I would love the opportunity to challenge the ideas of why these laws, why things like the Second Amendment and so forth are still relevant. They're still relevant to protect centuries-old ideology that still plagues this country. And until that's addressed, until things are addressed at the core, this will never change. Now, what do we do about it? Here's the thing. Sadly enough, I don't think any layperson has the power to change this. These things are bred in families. These things are bred in communities. These things are bred in people's religion. So until we address what the real problem is at the very core of it, the very attitude of it, the belief of it, it's not going to go away. We have to, and here's the thing. I have been toying with purchasing guns to protect my home, right? I believe in the blood of Jesus. It is what it is. And I haven't needed a gun since I stopped carrying a gun. I believe personally, I believe that people who carry weapons are looking for trouble. Now, does that say I shouldn't have a gun or a weapon to protect my house? Probably should. Okay. But here's why the beloved Second Amendment is what it is because the assumption and the attitude is that it only applies to white folks. We've seen examples. We've seen examples where legal gun owners, Black legal gun owners, still got treated as if they were criminals. But we live in a world, here's the thing. We live in a world where for us as Black people, we have to protect ourselves, not only sometimes from each other, but we have to protect ourselves against the idea, against the attitude, against the psyche of America that paints us as the villain. The reality of it is that they're arming themselves against the perception of, the belief of, the idea of that they're protecting themselves against us. That's just facts. That's why when you see a person of color in specific neighborhoods, they come running out telling them they don't belong there. That's why when you see people of color in certain situations that you don't belong here. That's the attitude that I'm talking about. Now, let me reset this. Once again, my name is Jonathan Beauregard. This is the podcast, Indestructible Souls, Mental Wellness for African American Men and Boys. And, you know, I went on my soapbox for about the mass shootings and how I feel about it from I guess you would call a political, historical standpoint. Understand this, and I am who I am, and so forth. regardless of my profession, I don't have an issue with anybody. But at the same time, I understand in this country, my skin matters. My experience as a Black man matters. My experience in the Black community matters. So regardless of my profession, I can't leave that behind. But this is my belief. Now, here's what I want to do, because I know I spent a lot of time on this. And I'm just going to go over quickly what are some things that we need to do from a mental health standpoint. From a mental health standpoint. Yet again, this is Jonathan Beauregard of Indestructible Souls. And today we're talking about the mass shootings, the attitudes, the psyche, and how do we recover yet again from the trauma of these type of events. So here's the thing, and I talked about this on the show once before when we talk about vicarious trauma, right? Now, understand this. The people in the schools and the people in the grocery store, not only is there direct trauma by the victims, by the family members and the loved ones that are left to clean up the wreckage, but there's also trauma from anybody that was in the store and witnessed it. There's also trauma from people in those communities that are very close to those locations. And then as we even spread out further and further, there's continued and ongoing trauma by everyone in this country that feels for those families and those victims. And when we constantly see these types of things on TV or hear about them, and here we are, we have children. I have a grandson, 7 years old, that is in elementary school, who happens to go to a school where there was a shooting. And so all of us, to a degree, will experience some type of trauma. It's just how it works. And so when we talk about all of these things that are happening in our world, in our communities, in schools and things like that, how do we do, or what should we do when we're dealing with some type of trauma? And I'm particularly talking about a vicarious trauma, a trauma that we didn't experience directly, but it affects us nonetheless. And especially if it connects to our previous experiences. So I'm not going to go into a whole topic about vicarious trauma, but one of the things I want to encourage people to do is the first thing you have to do is recognize your trauma. You have to recognize if these events are affecting you. A couple of signs will be obviously anxiety, being nervous, being hypervigilant, being uneasy in crowds, being having these negative or fearful thoughts. Those are just some signs that you might be experiencing some trauma if you go out shopping, if you go to specific places and you feel your anxiety level rising, if you're having trouble sleeping, if you're having negative dreams or nightmares. That might be a sign that you're affected by trauma. The first thing you have to do is acknowledge it. And the second thing is talk about it. I would like to see people to start having conversations. The last thing you should do is let that stuff sit in your spirit and let that anxiety sit in your body. So we have to talk about it. The other thing is whatever coping skills that you have that helps you reduce your anxiety, whether it's through exercise, reading, music, going out and dancing or whatever it may be. Although we don't want to seem insensitive, You have to stay connected to those things that keep you well. So when we talk about experiencing vicarious trauma, that's one of the reasons why I don't watch the news very much, because you get these images in your head, and then sometimes they come out when you experience something, and when your stress level is high, then we have a breakdown because of all the trauma that's built up in our body. So the first thing is recognize it, talk about it. Now is the time to embrace your coping skills, and if need be, seek help. So when we talk about coping with any type of trauma, the first thing we got to do is release it. We got to talk about it. We got to acknowledge it, which is very important. Now, here's the other thing. What should we be telling our kids right now? Because the kids see it. Here's the thing. Don't underestimate what kids pay attention to. Don't underestimate what they understand and what they see and so forth. Now, I know we're about to get out for the summer. Most of the schools are getting out for summer break. And, you know, whether they're going to summer school, you guys are planning family trips, or whatever it may be, we still have to have conversations. And here's the thing. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask your child questions. Here's what I mean by this. Parents, oftentimes, we preach too damn much. We get an idea, we have a thought, we think we know it all. So in terms of what should you tell your children, the first thing is ask them questions. Ask them how they're feeling. Ask them what are their thoughts. Let them, in their childlike voice and with their how they see the world, explain to you what's bothering them. Explain to them, let them explain to you what they see happening. And be there to respond. Be there to respond. Have a conversation. Here's the other thing. Don't heighten their anxiety or their fear by projecting your fear and your anxiety onto your children. We should always practice safety precautions, right? No talking to strangers, not going off places where they shouldn't be going, sleeping well, eating well. But let's have a conversation. If they ask about it, let them talk about it. Let them explain their understanding and how they understand it. And then you be there to correct and guide. Here's the thing. The answer can't just simply be, oh, it's crazy people or it's racist people. No, have a conversation. Because here's the thing. Believe it or not, children can show empathy, but they're also taking in this world themselves. So you have to be the example and allow them to use their coping skills. Check your environment. Is your environment, meaning your home, is it creating more stress and anxiety for your children, especially in a time like this? And if they need help, get them help. But the first thing I'm suggesting is allowing them to express themselves at the cognitive level that they're at, and then you be there to have a conversation. Allow them to gain understanding and not to input fear, not to separate, but let them understand that sometimes people do bad things. And if they feel unsafe, talk about what the safety plan is and who are the safe people that they can go to. I understand that the shooter in Texas was on campus for an hour. but was on the campus for quite a while before anybody even noticed. Make sure that your children understand and have an avenue to express themselves. Stop underestimating children's experiences because they live in this world too. Now, when we talk about living in a society which is supposed to be the best country in the world, that's constantly delivering hate, that's constantly brutalizing each other, that's constantly spewing ideas that are divisive, somebody has to be the equalizer. And most likely that's going to be you as parents. That's going to be you as uncles and aunties and things like that. We have to expose our children to positivity and things that are productive. It's a tough world out there, but we don't have to live in it. We can rise above it. My hope is that at some point, and I know I won't see it in my lifetime, that the attitudes and the psyche of this country begins to shift. And here's the thing. That's why critical race theory, or whatever you want to call it, is so important. True history. Now, here's the thing. If I want to suppress the truth so certain students don't feel bad, then how are things going to change? Now, let's look at it this way. Because the argument is they don't want particularly white students to feel bad about the history or the truth about things. But if we as the people don't understand the spirit of the law, or we don't understand the spirit of why things happen, how are we ever supposed to challenge it? But here's an idea. So let's just say over the next couple of generations, when instead of people feeling bad, what if the next couple of generations say, wow, dad, mom, grandpa, grandma, I don't subscribe to those things. I don't subscribe to the ideology. I don't need to be ashamed of the heritage, but I'm not proud of it and I want to do something different. They want to suppress it because they want to continue it. That's enough. My name is Jonathan Beauregard. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm located in the city of Colton, California. This has been the podcast, Indestructible Souls. You can also catch me at BeauregardTherapy.com, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. And I want you guys to be safe out there. We have to be vigilant. We have to be safe. But most importantly, we have to talk to one another and have conversations. And we got to have conversations about the truth. Yet again, join me June 15th at 6 o'clock for Men's Health Awareness Day in the city of Rialto. You can see the phone number to get more information. I will be one of the presenters along with a lot of other qualified people, but we're going to be talking about particularly for men. And come out, enjoy the night, and Beauregard Therapy and myself will be there represented. And I want to continue to thank you for your support of the podcast, of the practice, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the long weekend. This is Jonathan Beauregard, and I'm out.